On News 5 Live, a heinous murder in the Placencia Peninsula. A caretaker is tortured and chopped to death by two intruders at a house in St. Bite. A well-known taxi man is injured during a shooting in Orange Walk. Ricardo Oak was with a female passenger, trailed and shot by a gunman who later fled in his taxi. As many as 5 seats will be vacated on the Supreme Court bench in 2020. Government is calling on local senior councils interested in taking up the available posts. Prices for kerosene and diesel fuel going way up, and a late start to the sugar crop, millions of dollars in losses, and a significant drop in production. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
Signing up for Smart's broadband got even better.
Good evening. Welcome to News 5 Live for Tuesday, January 7th. I am Marlene Cuellar. A man was killed late this afternoon in St. Bite. Details are sketchy at this time, but News 5 understands that the victim is a Mexican national who worked as a caretaker of a property in the area. Preliminary reports are that it is a home invasion turned murder. We're told that the victim was observed with what appears to be chop wounds on his face and across his midsection. Sources say that investigators believe the man may have also been tortured and that the culprits may have also attempted to set the property on fire, but they didn't succeed. The unidentified victim reportedly tried to get away from his killers and was only able to identify his attackers as two dark-complexioned men. Police are yet to release official details, so we'll have more about the latest homicide in Wednesday's newscast. A popular taxi man escaped with his life on Monday evening when he was targeted by someone who was trailing him in the San Jose Nuevo Palmar area of Orange Walk. Ricardo Uck was with a female passenger when he came under fire from a masked gunman in the area of the water tank in the village. Uck and the woman fled, and the gunman drove off in Uck's SUV. He was taken to the Northern Regional Hospital for the injuries to his chest. News 5's Dwayne Moody reports.
Well-known taximan in Orange Walk, Ricardo Uck, was injured in a shooting on the night of January 6th in San Jose Nuevo Palmar. As the 46-year-old Douglas resident took a fare to the village, another vehicle trailed him. Uck came to a stop on San Jose Drive, about 150 feet from the water tank in the village. Seconds later, a gunman alighted the trailing vehicle and opened fire. Uck and the female passenger scattered, but the taximan later realized that he had been shot to the chest. The gunman then fled in his white Mitsubishi Outlander SUV towards the bypass. Residents say they heard 3 shots.
I came inside, it was around 6:20. Then I sat on the side of my mom's side, and then we were talking, and then we heard I just heard the 3 shots. And then I turned around and looked at her, and we would look at each other and said, we didn't pay much mind. And then after the let's say 10 to 15 seconds, my neighbor came and asked us if we can call the police because the man got shot and he's laying out on the street. And then we came out, and then the poor man just came way back here. And then when I saw, he was all bleeding in his left side. So I called the police.
4 expended 9mm shells were found at the scene, but by the time police arrived, Uck had already been taken to the Northern Regional Hospital.
He said, I don't have beef with nobody. And he said, I don't have no problem with nobody. He was all rushed, and he was asking about the girl. And then he said, where's this girl and this? And then the girl was standing right by the shop. And then someone just came and picked her up. Then he went, and I guess she realized when the man got shot or something, and then she came back for the man and took him to the hospital.
Just before 1 p.m. today, Uck was discharged and is recovering, fearing for his life. He declined to give an interview today, but says that he has no beef with anyone. A resident in the village says that Uck is a friendly person.
This village is very calm with peaceful people, and people in their own business. No trouble with each other. So first time we heard this thing. Very in the area of where a lot of people are,
Now, I understand that you normally use this taxi man as well, right?
Yes, I always call him, in less than 5 minutes he's already here. He's very friendly. He always talk about his things and how life is and that.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
The 2020 legal calendar gets underway on January 13th, and the Attorney General's ministry is already looking at possibly replacing as many as 5 judges, including Chief Justice Kenneth Benjamin, in the months ahead. That's because, with the exception of Justice Shona Griffith, they will all be reaching retirement age this year. As we reported last week, Griffith is stepping down to take up an appointment with the Supreme Court in Barbados, while C.J. Benjamin and Justice Courtney Abel will be turning 65 in March. It means that the executive will be actively seeking their replacements, and the pool from which the selections will be drawn covers the entire Caribbean region. According to Attorney General Michael Perrafit, an initial meeting was held with the Chief Justice on Monday, after which the Prime Minister will also be meeting with him to chart the way forward. The process, he says, is rather sensitive, since all 3 arms of government function autonomously.
Very soon it will be 5. Later on I think it's this year or early next year. We have 2 more justices who will reach the age of 65, and we will have to know at that point what we intend to do with those judges. I had a preliminary meeting with the Chief Justice yesterday, and he has informed me that notices have been sent out throughout the Caribbean and locally as well, and more will be done locally to try to seek judges to have an interest in coming to this jurisdiction to practice. We know for sure that Justice Griffith will leave by the middle of this month to take up a seat in Barbados. We know that Justices Abel and the Chief Justice himself, they both reach retirement age in March. Yesterday was just a preliminary meeting to map out the challenges that we have, and very soon there will be a meeting between the Chief Justice and the Prime Minister, and possibly myself again, to discuss where we go forward from here. There's always the option of possibly extending, even if for a short time, those justices who are retiring immediately. And with that, it would be simpler, but then these judges would have to want to stay. We would have to go through a process and seek consultation as to whether or not there would be consensus for them staying. It's a process, and it's delicate. The executive has to be a part of this selection process and dealing with this matter, while at the same time not even appearing to be interfering in the judiciary. So we're walking a very, very delicate line, and I would be uncomfortable saying more than what I have just said, other than to say that there will be a meeting very urgently between the Chief Justice and the Prime Minister, because there are other issues as well.
Offering the Chief Justice a contract extension means that government would be prepared to negotiate new terms of agreement to include pay scale and salary, as well as other benefits. That decision, however, is also contingent upon a vote to be taken by members of the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. The task force is comprised of representatives from the Public Service Commission and the Bar Association, the Solicitor General, and C.J. Benjamin himself. While 2 persons have expressed interest thus far, the process, the Attorney General says, will be thorough.
There's the issue of financing, there's the issue of a pay scale, and different things that judges may want to be equally protected like most public servants. Even though they're independent, they do draw pay from the public's purse. So all of those discussions will take place. It's important that we pay attention to it, because indeed having judges in place, especially a Chief Justice, is very important, whether it be this current Chief Justice or a new one. So all that discussion has to take place, and we look forward. We, of course, will encourage local people, local senior counsel, to seek an interest in judgeships in Belize. We know we have 2 people who have expressed interest, and hopefully when we look at everyone carefully, we can make a decision at that point to say, look, we have assessed from the Caribbean, we have assessed from home, and we will look carefully as to who we want to have the Judicial and Legal Services Commission hopefully choose. The Public Service Commission has a vote through the chairman, the Solicitor General has a vote, the current Chief Justice has a vote in terms of that selection process. It doesn't make it simpler that there is a challenge in the court against the makeup of the Judicial and Legal Services Commission by the bar against the Chief Justice himself. So, as well as the AG's ministry, because you have to sue us whenever you sue anybody who is drawing pay from the public's purse. All of those things make matters complicated.
January 15th, that's the date when the mills at the ASR BSI factory in Tower Hill, Orange Walk will crank up. This afternoon, a meeting was held between representatives from the millers and 4 Cane Farmers Association in the north, where the start date for the 2019-2020 crop season was finally determined. But even as an agreement has been reached, the delay in the start of the season due to last year's prolonged drought is having an adverse effect on the industry. The projection is that production will be down by an estimated 30%, which means that approximately 1 million tons of sugarcane will be milled. That's 300,000 tons less than last year's production. The decline in production is a loss in the millions of dollars. Following today's scheduled meeting, ASR-BSI's manager of Cane Farmers Relations, Olivia Avales, spoke with News 5. She says that even though the forecast is for a low production and low cane quality year, the industry stakeholders are going to make the best of it.
The entire industry is under an impact of severe drought, and we had stakeholders had to make a decision to start a little bit later because we didn't have sufficient cane that would be ready or that was of good quality to start the crop season. So we did meet in November actually, and we had to make that tough decision. But here we are going to start, even though we forecast a low production year and a low cane quality year, we are going to work hard to get this season as successful as it can be. The production has dropped from the 1.317 million tons of cane that we had last year to an estimated production of 1 million tons of cane, and so you have a 30% drop in everything. The farmers are optimistic that with what we have, we are able to start the crop season now.
So how does the industry bounce back? Since there is no insurance for the cane farmers, the government had promised the disbursement of drought relief funds. While there are reports that several persons have received assistance, News 5 has been informed that a large number of farmers in the north have not benefited. Cane Farmers Relations Manager Olivia Avales says that farmers must prepare their fields to ensure that the next cycle is productive.
The canes that were harvested last year in December and early January are definitely severely impacted by the drought, and here's where the farmers will need to cut those fields out, maintain it, do their ratoon maintenance, as we call it, fertilize it, do the controls, and allow that to grow and go through its normal cycle for the following year. Yes, those fields would be considered completely lost, and that's where the farmers would specifically need the drought relief effort, because that is considered a loss. If they don't cut those fields and allow it to grow just without any maintenance, you also have an impact, because it will go through another normal drought period, and so it will have an extended drought period as well. So the best thing to do with those fields is really to take the loss of those, cut it out, clean it, maintain it, and have it ready for the following crop season.
Given the estimates, the milling of sugarcane at the factory is expected to conclude in early June. 7 days into the start of 2020, consumers are bracing for a significant jump in prices of fuel as of midnight tonight. And it is expected that further surges in prices will hit consumers as the volatile situation involving Iran continues to play out. So kerosene will increase by 26 cents from $7.51 to $7.07 per gallon. Diesel will go up by 23 cents from $10.06 to $10.29 per gallon. The prices for regular gasoline and premium gasoline will remain unchanged at $10.72 and $10.06 per gallon at pump stations. A government release states that these price changes reflect current demand and supply conditions of crude oil in the international petroleum market and fluctuations in the acquisition price of refined fuel products in the countries from which Belize obtains its supplies. Coming up, we'll have more on the judiciary. And the evangelical churches say the sky is falling on the heels of a ruling by the Courts of Appeal. Chief Justice Kenneth Benjamin succeeded Abdullah Kante as the presiding judge of the Supreme Court back in 2011. During his tenure on the bench, C.J. Benjamin came under fire from the Bar Association in September 2017 for failing to render judgments in a timely manner, leading to a backlog in a number of outstanding cases before the High Court. Will that blemish on his professional image be taken into consideration when the time comes for government to approach him for a possible contract extension? That's what we asked the Attorney General in a one-on-one following today's cabinet meeting. He told News 5 that there are multiple ways to examine the issue.
In the case of C.J. Benjamin, however, if he were to be asked to stay on for the next couple of months or for an extended period of time, if that were the case, we're looking at a presiding judge here who has had a complaint against him before insofar as the timeliness with which he is dispensing his cases. Would this count against him, or how does that factor into this approach to have a meeting with him to see where we go forward?
Well, you could argue it both ways. You could say that this situation would be a reason to not offer him an extension. You could say that this is exactly the reason why maybe you should offer him an extension and say, look, if you are willing to go for 1 more year, for example, and that's all you're willing to do, if that's what you're willing to do, then we would ask that you render your decisions within that period of time so that if and when you leave after that, then we don't have to have a new judge coming in, rehearing all those cases again. So it's one thing to say, you know what, this is a person we shouldn't consider renewing because he hasn't done his judgments. But then what do you do with all those judgments if you don't renew and you have to go and relitigate those matters all over again? It may be a good reason to keep the person on for another year. But like I said, the government, the Solicitor General, and the rest of the JLSC would have to want that, including the other judges would have to want to stay as well.
Notwithstanding the Chief Justice's pending retirement, there is a matter that has been lodged before the Supreme Court in which he is being challenged as chair of the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. The Bar Association, through attorney Andrew Marshallek, is taking C.J. Benjamin to court for sidelining its president from JLSC meetings. It is his position that Director of Public Prosecutions Sherilyn Vidal should not sit on the JLSC because of the duality of the offices she holds. While the matter is set to be heard, will his departure mean that the case will be abandoned, or will his successor carry forward a similar perspective?
It's an accepted fact that the current situation was caused by the Chief Justice as the chairman saying he did not see it appropriate for the president of the bar, who was also a public servant, to serve on the JLSC. If, and it's a big if, like to say bold, italicized, underline, if this current Chief Justice were to say that come March he's retiring and he doesn't want to return, maybe a new Chief Justice would have a different view on the matter, and so then maybe that case would go away. But we don't know. So we would have to do everything at once and see what happens. If this current Chief Justice decides that he wants to stay, and if the JLSC votes for him to stay, then we will have to just deal with that case.
The evangelical churches today offered their interpretation of the recent ruling relating to Section 53. On December 30, 2019, the Court of Appeal handed down a judgment upholding the Chief Justice's ruling on Section 53 of the Belize Criminal Code, in which he found that it contravened the constitutional rights to dignity, equality before law, privacy, freedom of expression, and non-discrimination on the grounds of sex, and was therefore unconstitutional. C.J. Kenneth Benjamin also ruled that the word sex is to include sexual orientation. 8 days after the judgment, the National Evangelical Association of Belize hosted a press conference in Belize City where they claimed that such a ruling will have disastrous ramifications for Belize.
We are, however, gravely concerned at the appeals court ruling last week, upholding that sex in the Constitution is meant to include sexual orientation. This is judicial activism, where one judge changed the meaning of our Constitution with the stroke of a pen by passing parliamentary and constitutional procedures. This will have disastrous ramifications for Belize. And what is the definition of sexual orientation? Whose definition? Pedophilia is currently claimed as a sexual orientation by pedophiles. So now a fluid, evolving definition will form the basis for non-discrimination in our Constitution. We and our member churches are vehemently opposed to man's effort to redefine marriage and sexuality, which man did not create, God did. As we have warned for years in this battle, the LGBT now have a green light by the court for same-sex marriage and to teach our children and grandchildren in schools that homosexuality and transgenderism is normal and natural. Belize, wake up. And our government is quietly fast-tracking anti-discrimination and hate speech legislation set for public consultation this month, January, yet has not given us a copy of the law. Neither legislation nor judicial decision can ever turn an unnatural human wrong into a human right, nor can it confer human dignity upon acts in which there is no dignity. For those who will mock God with "the sky is not falling," we caution. After years of loving, patient warning by God and Noah, a sky of rain did fall. No doubt, God will have the last word. He calls us all to repent.
There is no certainty that there will be an appeal that would take the case to the Caribbean Court of Justice, but it is under consideration by the association. Vice President Scott Sturm says that the ruling demolishes what they have fought for, and with the anti-discrimination legislation coming on board, he says that this paves the path for other LGBT issues to become legal. The association is launching a manifesto that will tackle 7 societal issues.
Everything that we have fought against now has a green light in the nation of Belize. As we have in our statement, the government is very quietly moving forward with anti-discrimination legislation. We got an email concerning a consultation with a consultant from Barbados at the end of November, beginning of December, right as Christmas celebrations are starting. And it was concerning anti-discrimination legislation that is being drafted in Belize. He did not present to us a copy of the legislation. He gave us a copy of a model that they're using, and but they informed us that this will be going to public consultation in the month of January and then to the House after that. And we find this shocking because, again, this is giving green light for everything that the LGBT have wanted in the country of Belize. Anti-discrimination, which means that, and hate speech, which means that you will not be able to speak against them. If you want sexual orientation included in this, you have to put those words in the Constitution. What we are crying foul over is that one man with the stroke of a pen just changed the meaning in our Constitution by saying sex is meant to include sexual orientation. And part of our question with that is, what is the definition of sexual orientation?
We're taking a united stand with consensus with other evangelical leaders on each of these issues, and we will be rolling out more about these issues to the media in the coming weeks. This week we want to focus on number 2 and number 3. And I will read those parts of those to you. beginning with number 2, traditional marriage and family.
We would want to appeal to the CCJ, but I'm not sure if we as NAB, but we're going to get a broader group of persons. And if we can go to that length, we will go. But we are praying to Almighty God to step in, which he has never stepped out, to show his power in all of this. We are humans, we make our point, but the government still does not hear us, and the powers that be does not hear us, but we know that God hears us, and God will judge in the long run. The sky will fall.
Is trouble brewing once again in the football world? News 5 is in receipt of correspondence in which the chairman of the Belize District Football Association, William Miguel, is being asked to recall what is described as an illegal extraordinary congress convened by the Football Federation of Belize and the executive committee of the BDFA. According to the letter, the gathering, which was called to order by the FFB Secretariat and the BDFA Executive Committee, only saw the attendance of 4 of its 14 Congress members, which is less than 25% of the membership of the District Association. The decision is said to be unconstitutional as it is a breach of the statutes of the BDFA. Following a meeting today at the Marion Jones Sporting Complex, it is expected that Chairman Miguel will formally respond to the concerns by the end of the week. After the break, the $130 million contract to Emer Hernandez. Still no signs of a copy.
The Belize Billing Act
The Freedom of Information Act remains at the center of a failed request by the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry to get its hands on a copy of Emer Hernandez's contract to pave the coastal highway. The mega contract is for a whopping $130 million. The call for a fax of that agreement comes on the heels of concerns raised by the opposition at the last sitting of the House of Representatives in 2019. While a formal letter was written to the government of Belize in early December, the only correspondence the chamber has received thus far is that the Ministry of Works is in possession of the request. So what is stopping them from gaining access to the document? According to Attorney General Michael Parafit, FOIA has to be properly invoked in order for the information to be released.
Where are we now as to why the chamber is still not in possession of that?
Have they requested it by virtue of the Freedom of Information Act? If they haven't, then how can you get a response? If you request
Is that the only prescription though?
No, I mean, it's not the only prescription, but it's the best, most professional prescription. You are the Chamber of Commerce. You are a body of successful business people. You're supposed to set an example as to how to do things properly. If the Chamber of Commerce requested that matter through the proper channel and they did not receive it, then they have a legitimate complaint. But if they just write letters and complain and just say, dear Ministry of Works, give me the contract, then that is something that is not the best way to do things. So I would urge upon the Chamber to do it properly. And once you do things properly and then you are refused, then you have a legitimate complaint. But until then, I don't think that they can legitimately complain. Very, very few people ask for information through the Freedom of Information Act. But when they do, they get it. So just do it. The law is set up for you to do a particular way. And once you do it that particular way, then you should have no issue getting what you want.
So while government is yet to provide a copy of the Hernandez contract to the chamber, government's chief legal officer, Michael Parafit, is demanding that opposition leader John Briceño apologizes for comments he made during his New Year's address last week. Allegations were made by the PUP leader that ranking government officials were involved in the landing of drug planes across the country. The Attorney General gave Briceño 24 hours to produce the evidence to support his claim. That time frame has expired, and Briceño didn't budge. Today, AG Parafit called on Briceño to apologize to the nation.
The 24-hour period that you had given the leader of the opposition has long since elapsed, and there doesn't seem to be any evidence forthcoming. Where do we stand insofar as the allegations that he made in his New Year's address?
Well, it proves that he will make any desperate statement, however untrue, simply to try and create some momentum for his political party. But I think it was very, very irresponsible of the leader of the opposition to claim that there were officials high up in the government facilitating the landing of drug planes and then provide no evidence to show on what basis he made that claim. I believe that he has no basis for making that claim, or he would have brought that evidence to show that he had legitimate reasons for making that claim. I think he ought to be ashamed of himself. I think he owes the National Assembly and the officials from the UDP an apology. He owes this nation an apology, because those UDP officials, or all UDP officials, since UDP is in government, represent the entire country of Belize. So when you claim that government officials are facilitating the landing of drug planes, you are bashing Belize. You're bashing the nation. And I think that the leader of the opposition needs to apologize for his reckless comments, his irresponsible comments, because you cannot make those comments if you don't have proof of what you're saying. And that's my position on that.
When we come back, NIAB predicts a jump in HIV cases, but where is the evidence? NIAB today made claims on a number of issues in regards to the decision by the Court of Appeal to uphold the CJ's ruling on Section 53. The association is linking homosexuality to an increase in the number of persons living with HIV, with no evidence at hand. According to Secretary George Farrar, with the ruling on Section 53, which now legalizes intercourse between two consenting adults of the same sex, more people will engage in gay sex and contract the virus.
With homosexuality being normalized here, a lot more people are going to try it, and they're going to very likely contract AIDS and be a big burden on the health system, drive up costs of health in Belize, which everybody's going to pay for.
Are you saying that because of Section 53 ruling that more people will engage in sexual acts and therefore there will be a spike in HIV numbers?
This is what happens. When an act becomes legal, then people can begin to consider it normal. Your own children in the schools can be subject to teaching that homosexuality is normal. Try it out. Even kids ages down to 7 have been taught that in schools in the U.S. and other countries. Do you want that to happen here? Do you want that to happen to your kids?
What do you tie gay people having gay sex and abusing protection? Because it seems like you're assuming that gay people will go to use protection. You're using numbers in the U.S. and other countries. Yes.
Well, we haven't seen that happen here. We don't have enough statistics here yet, but we see that happening in other countries. We don't want to happen that.
Human behavior is human behavior.
In terms of what you're separating gay people from straight people, but in terms of
The statistics are, yes.
Yeah, statistics in Belize. Do you know how many gay people have HIV/AIDS in terms of increased numbers this year, last year, 2018?
Not currently, no, right now. But what we're stating is the pattern and trend in other nations that have legalized the same exact things that have been legalized in Belize. So I think that it's very, very safe ground to predict. Human behavior is human behavior. And so it's simply the power of suggestion.
And I would imagine that to protect human life, the church would prepare or promote contraceptives, protection, condoms.
That's a very nice trick question.
Oh, yes, yes.
The National Evangelical Association of Belize is also of the view that the extension of the meaning of the word sex to include sexual orientation opens the door to many interpretations. Vice President of NIAB, Scott Sturm, says that the line that separates absolute and relatives has been crossed to include any and everything, including pedophilia and bestiality.
That pedophiles are claiming now that this is their sexual orientation. So that's what we mentioned in our statement. Now we have a liquid, fluid, evolving definition that is going to provide the platform and basis for non-discrimination from our Constitution. We find that to be absolutely ridiculous.
It could even include incest and bestiality eventually.
If they claim that as their sexual orientation. So we've crossed over a line from absolutes into a line of relativity where anything goes. And so same-sex marriages, what's to stop 3 people getting married together, or 4 people, or somebody that really loves their horse that wants to marry their horse? We've crossed over a line from absolutes into relativity. And from here on, everything can go.
Coming up after the break, continued disposal of medical waste in the South is making people ill. We'll hear from the residents.
With over 100
perspective.
Some residents in San Antonio, Toledo are alleging that burning of medical waste is making them sick. According to them, particularly those who reside near the San Antonio Polyclinic, the improper disposal of the waste has been going on for about 5 years. The residents say that they have complained bitterly over the years, but the clinic's administrators haven't done anything to address it, except to take their complaints and have them sign some papers. Well, now they want the Ministry of Health to address the problem. One resident, Felicita Cruz, says that the unpleasant smell from the waste pile accumulates in her house and is causing her to become ill. We've reached out to the Ministry of Health for a comment on the matter, and we'll get a response from the Director of Health Services on Wednesday, as he was out of office. Here's how Cruz describes the problem she and other residents are facing in the village.
It affects us in general, whole village, with the sense of burning of the how you call those things from the hospital, all the injection stuff, the syringes and whatnot. You know how that smells, and the rubber, the plastic, all the gloves. It's very awful. It's not good to us, and especially when time like they are going to bring it every week, they bring it in then, and when time it's going to rain and things so. Like they're just going to burn it at the same time, and the smoke starts to surround all outside and inside of our house. And that goes all in the whole village itself. I have been starting to catch cough and cold often. So I tried going to the clinic, the pills, medication doesn't work. I have been to tell them about my problem. So you tell me if I just not use the pills, and from there I started, and I haven't went to the clinic again so far, but I'm still with this cough. Then I have a neighbor that is sick right now, not far to us, here, close to the clinic. She is suffering from, I think, respiratory problem, and a little boy is in the PG clinic the same way. I think he is vomiting blood or something, his mom says.
And you believe that these health complications are as a result of the burning of, the waste that's coming from the hospital?
Yes, I believe it's that, because it affects me in general, because whenever I started to inhale the smoke, it brings me a bad headache that I don't even want to eat my food before I go sleep.
You said you see syringes, gloves, anything else you recognize being burnt?
Well, yes. Before, when it first started, the dog used to go and bring all the garbage around my house. We could see like the pampers from the adult pampers, maybe from the pregnant woman, but it got blood. The blood bag where they use, I think, to make them give blood. All of that was being scattered around my house. Sometimes I think we think of the babies when they're born. Sometimes the dogs are eating that sometimes. We find it around our house. Right. And when you pass over there, oh my goodness, it's like one dead body around my house.
So those materials, do you know where exactly they're coming from? Is this just from the San Antonio clinic?
Well, I have seen it myself. The truckload is coming from PG hospital, because I was going to town one time and I saw the big truck coming with the load. So I wasn't at home for video at that time, but I saw with the truck when it left. So, but I hear they pass and pick up the Columbia one too. So it's like two. I think they pass and collect big parcels, because all that they're on the way coming down. So.
The Toledo West Area Representative Oscar Requena is also taking on the issue. According to Requena, some 12 families are being severely affected by the burning of medical waste in San Antonio Village. The parliamentarian is calling on the Ministries of Health and Environment to properly address the matter immediately.
Calling upon the Minister of Health and the Ministry of the Environment to immediately address this matter, because this cannot continue that way. I mean, it is having a very severe impact upon the health of our people in the surrounding areas, and they are very concerned, and they want this matter to cease and desist immediately. I want, the Minister of Health to immediately address this matter. I want the Minister of the Environment to ensure that they enforce, that, that press release that they sent out, and basically hold those people who are doing this responsible, man. And I will tell you, the people have stood up yesterday, and they will continue to voice their concerns. If it goes unnoticed and it goes unchecked, Hipólito, we will do what we have to do to bring this matter to a close. It is totally unacceptable.
Back in November, we reported about the meeting held by the Belize Police Department with 25 or so gun dealers. In that meeting, they discussed a number of proposed gun control measures. Some of the changes were to take effect this year, and on Monday, Commissioner of Police Chester Williams told the press that the control measures, including regulations on the number of ammunition a licensed gun holder can buy. This new regulation, according to Williams, will help to prevent criminals' access to ammunition sold by licensed gun dealers, which may be more of a challenge for law enforcement to track. Here's how he puts it.
While our research is showing that many of the guns that are used in the commission of crime are coming across the border from Guatemala side, the ammunitions that are used are locally purchased ammunitions. So in other words, it is telling us that the criminals go across the border, buy the illegal guns, bring it into the country. But when it comes to the ammunitions are being purchased legally in Belize and sold to the criminals. And so what we propose to do was to find a way by which we can control more the sale of ammunitions, in the sense that we're saying that every licensed firearm holder would have only been able to purchase 200 rounds per year. Now, as the law is, when you get a license for a firearm, a short arm, you get a license and you can carry 100 rounds at any given time. Now, if you ask any licensed firearm holder if they were ever able to use 100 rounds in a year without going on the range, the answer is no. Sometimes they have to actually trade in those rounds because they get too old on them. When you go to the range, the gun dealer would be allowed to get a permit to go and sell ammunition on the range. And then you can buy any amount you want on the range. But the caveat to that is that the amount that you purchase on the range must be expended on the range. And then it would have been the duty of the dealer to ensure that you expend those shells on the range. Nobody is to leave the range with any ammunition with them. So if it is that, let's say for example, Andrea Polanco is a license holder, and we see that Andrea Polanco goes to Louis Wade, who is a dealer, and purchases 100 rounds today. And then tomorrow, she goes and purchases another 100 rounds from Mr. Ortiz, who is another gun dealer. Now the question is, why did Andrea buy 100 rounds yesterday, and today she needs to buy another 100? So then we can now go to Andrea and find out, what did you do with the 100 rounds that you purchased yesterday that makes you need to purchase another 100 today? Because when we see things like that occurring, those are the persons who are selling the ammunition to the criminals on the streets.
And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/News5Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us, and from all of us here at News 5, good night.